Meeting to order, if we can have order. All right. The very first thing on our agenda will be the approval of the minutes of our last meeting, and I need a motion to proceed on that. Motion by Rob, seconded by Betty. Does anybody have any corrections in regard to this? If there are no corrections or additions, I will call for the vote on this. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. Moving on to the informational items. Our first one will be from the Greater Peoria Sanitary District, and we will take Mr. Johnson and listen to what he has to say. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy to be here. Always busy cleaning sewers, taking care of sewers, maintaining sewers, rebuilding sewers, lining sewers. So happy to answer any questions on the minutes or any questions in general. Thank you.
I should know this, but who appoints the Public Building Commission? I see you guys gave a thank.
Sure. So it's appointed by statutorily. There are several from the city, several from the, or one from the county, one from the sanitary district, and I believe the chairperson or the governing body appoints, at least in our case, the governing body appoints the one appointee we get.
I know how important this is because the school district benefit from it tremendously at different times. We build a number of buildings. Anyone else with any questions for Brian? Thank you for Brian for showing up. Our next order of business has to do with the facilities, and we will have Mark Little as the individual who may have some comments for us.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Couple updates on a few of the projects on the list. One item that has been completed is the domestic hot water boiler repair at the jail is all done and completed. The 2022 CLIP project, which we got funding for through Ameren, that is at the 95% complete mark, at least that it was last week. So that is getting ramped up. And the public defender and IT remodeling project, that is actually going out for bid tomorrow. It'll hit the street tomorrow. So we had some changes we had to make on that, so that'll hit the street tomorrow. Couple things not on here, at least one item, if you remember, Ameren approved to pay for the new burner for the boiler here. That is on order, and Calvin just updated me that they said that will be installed by the end of the year. So before the end of the year, that will be complete. So, any other questions?
No questions for Mark? Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
And as you notice, they have brought to us a number of resolutions, and I think most of them, are from our highway department. However, we do have one from administration, but the ordinance that we need to act on, the first three are going to be very similar. I need to have a motion to act on the first one in regard to a speed limit, and we need a motion by Jimmy, second by Betty. Jeff, are you going to handle these?
Yes, sir. So Medina Township Road Commissioner was receiving multiple complaints about speeding on Ivy Lake Road. So we did a speed study recently, and we are recommending changing the speed limit on Ivy Lake Road from an unposted 55 miles per hour to a posted 35 miles per hour. And this is based off of IDOT's policies on speed studies and the speed study that we performed.
Any questions for Jeff? Jeff, I know it starts with the people usually bringing a complaint to the road commissioner, and then road commission passes it on to the highway department and so forth. Tell us just a few of the things that you guys consider when you make a study.
Well, first we go out and we drive the road ourselves and see what we feel is a comfortable speed limit. And then we run radar. We pick a couple spots on the road and we run radar. We have to hit either a certain amount of time or a certain amount of vehicles before we can end the speed study. And we also take into account the number of driveways, number of pedestrians, sidewalks, things like that. So then we put all that information together, and there's a sheet in here with everyone. You guys can see the math on that a little bit, and that's what we come up with our recommendation with.
So you guys actually go out and drive the road yourselves and look at the entrances and so forth of that particular piece of area that they're talking about and so forth.
Correct.
And if it's not posted, if roads are not posted, then it's determined by the state law.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions for Jeff? Go ahead, Mr. Fennell.
Thank you, Phil. I'm not on this committee, but I know the road. I'm just kind of curious why you didn't go with like 45. I know there's some where you go across that narrow bridge, and there's a couple of them that a little less curves in them. It seems, for the straightaway, it seems pretty slow.
Well, the speeds we were studying, and we can't do this during rush hour in the morning or rush hour in the afternoon. There's certain qualifying times we can do the studies, but we were finding the average speed being 25 to 28, 30 miles an hour. I think the fastest speed we found was 31 miles an hour. So we bounced it off the road commissioner, said this is what our recommendation is, and he talked to the complainants, and they all seemed satisfied with it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Question, Betty.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have one? Oh, I was just also concerned with the slower speed, whether or not that would cause a hindrance in regards to driving. Sometimes you can drive too slow, but if you did your proper monitoring and what have you.
And Ivy Lake Roads, it is a township road. A lot of it is gravel. It's very narrow in spots. There's not much shoulder. There's a couple of culverts that are concrete culverts that have concrete walls. They're essentially almost one lane or 1.5 lane wide. So this lowering to 35 is not, that's what most people are driving anyway. That's the thing. This is the prevailing speed normally is what we set the speed limit as, is what most people are driving. So.
Rob?
Thank you. My only question is, who's responsible for the signage or changing those? Is it the township or is it?
The township road commissioner, yes.
Okay.
It has to be approved through the county board, and then he can post the signs if it's approved at the county board meeting.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of adopting this ordinance out of this committee signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. Moving on to the next resolution, which is again another one with speed in a particular area that I've even been in. Motion by Rob, second by Betty. So go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, so this one is for Wheatfield subdivision in Limestone Township. Same thing, road commissioner was receiving complaints of speeding in the subdivision. We did a speed study, and we are recommending changing from, most of the roads are an unposted 30 mile per hour, and we're recommending changing it to a posted 25 miles per hour. There was one street that is posted as 30 right now, so it'll be lowered to, the posting will be lowered 5. So.
Any questions for Jeff? Okay, all those in favor of adoption of this resolution signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. The next one we have where I think Mark Little is. in this area, this cobblestone, so we need to act on this resolution. Motion by Betty, seconded by Rob. Okay, you've got it again.
Okay, it's a very similar situation. I think the homeowners association actually made a request to the Kickapoo Township Road Commissioner due to speeding in the Cobblestone Estate subdivision. We're recommending changing the speed limit from an unposted 30 mile per hour to a posted 25 miles per hour.
Any questions or comments? Rob?
Quick question. So when I have my GPS on, it always tells me the speed limit of the road that I'm on. Do you have to update that somewhere? Is that on you, or is that whatever service you're
I
using?
think that's on Garmin or Apple or whatever app you're using.
Okay.
That's not anything we send to anybody. So I don't know if they monitor. I don't know how that happens exactly, but
Okay. Thank you.
it's nothing we send to them, no.
Okay.
Anyone else? All those in favor of the adoption of this resolution signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. And our next resolution has to do with the agreement that we want to allow the Highway Department to make. So, motion by Betty, seconded by Rob.
All right, so this is a resolution for us to enter in a funding agreement with the state of Illinois for the Pulsifer Road Bridge rehabilitation. Pulsifer Road's roughly halfway between Elmwood and Brimfield. It is a county highway. The bridge has got some issues with the deck beams, so we are planning on rehabilitating the bridge by replacing the deck beams, a new guardrail, new bridge wheel. The board approved an engineering agreement a long time ago, maybe a couple years ago, to do the plans. So the plans are done, they're ready. We're planning to go to the January 20th bid letting. This just allows us to use the federal money for the project. We're estimating the cost of construction at $750,000. $600,000 of that will be federal. The rest of it will come from the county bridge fund.
Jimmy?
Jeff, Amy, this so looking at so it was built in '94. Is 28 years for this type of construction seems awful short.
Agreed. I agreed. This one seems, for whatever reason, it didn't seem to last as long. Most of these deck beams, we are seeing about 40 years lifespan before we start getting this. This bridge is a little bit smaller. We're finding pretty major cracking in it, and we jumped on it maybe just a little bit earlier than we can, but sufficiency rating is only 42.1. So deck beams are one of these things that once they go, they can kind of go pretty fast. So we wanted to jump on this while we had the chance. But yes, I would agree with you. This is not a very old structure to be replacing this on.
I was just curious because 28 years, and I've seen far worse pictures than. It probably is worse than what the pictures dictate. But
It is. The pictures are pretty deceiving. They're hard to see, but there's longitudinal cracks in the beams, and those really drop the ratings on the decks. That means the pre-stressing strands are failing, and that's the strength of the beam is the pre-stressing strands. So the board is going to see more of these because we have the highway department over the years built a lot of these, and we're going to see more and more of these coming forward where we're having to replace deck beams because it's just their age. Most of the abutments and piers are in good shapes, but we just have to replace the beams on it.
so last question. So would the deck beams deteriorated faster due to salt, or is it something in those years of those deck beams when they were built that would have led to this? Like, do we seen other ones from the early 90s deteriorating at an early pace than what would be expected? Or I'm just trying to figure out what would be the cause of which makes life difficult for you if you're planning on 40 years and we're here at 28 years.
Salt, deck beams don't like salt. So they do not like salt very well. We have found a lot of deck beams on township bridges that don't get a lot of salt. They're in really pristine condition. some of our county highways, like we replaced Truett Bridge last year. Truett Bridge was pretty bad because it gets a lot of salt. Salt seems to be the major thing. I think the new deck beams, they are using some different additives and things to protect against that. We are also transitioning away from deck beams on county highways. We're going to more steel beams and poured concrete decks because we've seen this issue. But we have really good substructures. The abutments are in good shape and the piers are in good shape, and we can replace the beams for relatively low amount of money versus replacing a whole bridge. This is kind of what we're after right now. And this was the thought when I started the highway department 26 years ago. They're like, oh, these are easy. These go bad. We rip them off, put new ones on. Easy peasy. Theoretically, yes, but they tend to be a little more expensive than I think they thought in the past. So,
Coach, can I
Go ahead.
So, some townships aren't salting bridges. I thought bridges, weather-wise, you had to those get more slippery
they do.
due to. So we would have to be putting salt on them, correct? You don't not salt a bridge, right?
Not all township roads are paved. There's a lot of gravel roads that they don't salt. There's one township that doesn't own salt spreaders. So, and there's a couple of them that don't use very much salt at all. So.
Jeff, for just a matter of information, how is the construction business right now? Are we looking to get good bids, or are the companies looking to make a pretty good profit?
Can I answer that question in January? Right now, bid prices are very high compared to what we had been planning. The federal government has put more money out there for construction, has increased allotments. The Rebuild Illinois has put a lot of money in, and there were a lot of contractors have shrunk in size or gone out of business over the years. And now all of a sudden we have a huge influx of money, and there's not as many contractors, and so we're paying a little bit of premium to get them to bid our work. So our bridge letting we did in October that was approved, I think, last month, it came in at budget. So we were pretty happy with that. So we'll see. I think it's going to come back a little bit, but I'm not an economist either. So
You're as good as most of them. Any other questions in regard to this? Coin vote for this resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. Moving on to our next resolution. It has to do with payment of an engineering fee there on Maxwell Road, and need a motion to look into this. Motion by Betty, seconded by Rob. And I just want to mention that a few months ago, no, it wasn't even a few months ago, probably about a month ago maybe, we had that open house in regard to this, and I know Jeff was very, very busy that night, as well as Amy, answering questions and so forth. And this particular item that we're talking about was probably one of the things that was most asked about, and that was the railroad and the bridge over the railroad. Go ahead, Jeff.
So we're nearing the end of what we call phase 1 for Maxwell Road. That's our initial studies and telling IDOT what we're in the public, what we're going to do. So we're nearing the end of that. And we had to reach out to the railroad. Union Pacific Railroad actually owns the rail bed underneath the bridge on Maxwell Road. They took the lines out several years ago. There are no more rail tracks in place there. However, it is still owned by the railroad. The railroad could decide tomorrow, hey, we want to build a rail line, or they could sell it to another rail line and put a railroad in. So we have to keep the bridge in place so we can have clearance if there was a future rail tread. That was probably 90% of the questions we answered that night at the open house. Union Pacific, they require everybody to enter into an agreement to reimburse them for any costs they incur while they're reviewing our construction plans over their property. It's just a way for them to protect their property, to make sure we're not doing anything that would affect their property. So it's kind of a boilerplate agreement that they sent us. The amount was for $25,000 maximum. So There's no rail over it right now. We are rehabilitating the bridge. We are not going any lower. In fact, we might raise that bridge just a little bit with some new beams. So we really shouldn't have much fee involved with this. But unfortunately, we have to do this as part of a phase 1 study and to get approved through IDOT and to get approved through Union Pacific. So in our country, the railroads were here before the highways, and so the railroads carry a lot of power.
Now, actually, that entire Maxwell Road project, it might have been Amy, did you say that Crawford and Miller and Tilly, we've already paid them $200,000 to do engineering on that? That whole project? Shows you how much the cost is in just getting the thing ready to be constructed and so forth. Any other questions or comments in regard to this? All those in favor of this resolution signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. And Jeff, we're going to keep you in the hot seat the whole way.
I'm here all day, sir.
Okay. All right. We need a motion to look at a resolution that we have dealt with this area once before. I think, I can't remember if it was, is that in your area, Mr. Fino, or is that area? Huh? Dickinson? Okay. Need a motion on this resolution that to act on the engineering aspect of it. Motion by Rob, seconded by Betty. Okay. Jeff?
Well, as I mentioned a little bit ago, we did bid letting, excuse me, for Dickinson Lane Bridge in Medina Township. It's just next to, real close to Mossville Grade School. We held a bid letting back in October. We're a little short-staffed at Highway Department, and the staff we do have are going to be out west, on Pulsifer Road and Graham Chapel Road, which is out by Elmwood. So it's not real convenient to let them cover this and those other projects. What we did, we put out a request for qualifications to engineering firms to get one firm to cover this project and the Old Galena Road project, which will also be under construction next year. So they're within a stone's throw of each other. So we thought, well, we'll get one firm to cover both projects. So we did a request for qualifications, and we rated all the submittals, and we came up with Millennia Professional Services is rated the highest. So the amount for this agreement is $100,000 to oversee the construction on Dickinson Lane. We approved an intergovernmental agreement with Medina Township several years ago for this project that spells out that this cost will be split evenly between the county and the highway department, and the county and the township. So if it ends up costing the full $100,000, we'll each pay $50,000 towards it.
So this engineering firm, if they don't charge us the full $100,000, then we're going to possibly save some money.
Correct. If
Okay.
we only charge us, if we only end up using 80,000 of it, then we'll each pay 40.
And then we just have to pay 40,000.
Yes.
That's good. Good. And they are a minority business. I think you guys reported to us.
Yep.
Yeah. Because they had done work for us before.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyone else? Go ahead, Mr. Fennell.
That bridge doesn't get much flooding like it does over on that short road there by Route 6. I think it's pretty much to the Miller Farm, basically. Okay.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It does not seem to. That was part of our studies, and we talked to Mr. Miller and the other owners there. They're like, no, it's never gone over that we know of or have seen. And I actually had to inspect the bridge this morning. You can see the rain this week went through there and kind of cleaned the channel up a little bit, but it goes down very quick. There was no water in the stream this morning, so.
Not quite like the other bridge.
No, not like the other one.
Need to vote on this, right? Okay. All those in favor of the adoption of this resolution signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, our next one, which will be the last one for Jeff today, has to do with something that we've talked about quite a bit, and that's the old Galena Road project and so forth. And he's already told us a little bit about the engineering when he mentioned the last resolution. So we need to put this on the floor. So motion by Betty, seconded by Rob. He beat you, Jimmy.
All right, so Old Galena Road between State Street and Boy Scout Road will be let on the January 20th letting. And then it'll be under construction next year. Same thing, we a little short on staff, especially staff that's experienced with an urban project like this, a bigger project. So we put out the RFQ in conjunction with Dickinson Lane, and we were very upfront with the consultants that whoever we choose will do both projects. So our Millennia was the highest rated for the projects, and so we were choosing Millennia. It'll be $570,000 not to exceed, and that'll come out of the motor fuel tax fund. And this is all us. There's nobody to share this with.
How many engineers do you have out there, Jeff?
Well, there's Amy and I, and we have one other in the back room. We have an intern who's going to graduate from Bradley in May, and we already have an agreement to hire him. And then hopefully we're posting a position here very soon, and hopefully get a third one on board real quick. So.
Okay. I hope everybody's listening to you. Go ahead, Jim.
Jeff, Amy, was Millennia on the first phases of this, or is this switching engineers?
I didn't quite hear you, Jimmy.
I asked if Millennia was the primary engineer on the other phases, or if this is switching.
Millennia just does construction engineering. They don't do much design or any design really. So Midwest Engineers did the design for this. So.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're just there to see that the work is done properly.
Correct.
Being no more questions or comments on this resolution, I'll call for a vote on it. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Thank you very much, Jeff. All right, we have one more resolution here for our committee, and it's on a purchase of a piece of property, and I need a motion by Jimmy Dillon, seconded by Betty. And are you going to handle that?
I am, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item before you is to approve a purchase agreement to acquire 4422 North Brandywine Drive in Peoria. That is the land and the building where the County Election Commission is currently located. If you recall, in 2016, the board approved a multi-year lease for the Election Commission to be located at that facility. The board also approved several $100,000 of leasehold improvements to make that portion of the building that we are leasing for the Election Commission usable by the Commission. Since we did do that, the board has had in its long-range capital improvement plan the plan to acquire the property if that opportunity presented itself. We thought that opportunity might present itself in the current fiscal year, and so you approved in the 2022 budget $700,000 of American Rescue Plan Act funds for that acquisition. We did enter into a negotiation with the current owner using the commission as an intermediary. We've settled on a price of $555,000 plus the fees and costs of actually the transaction, and we would recommend approval of the purchase agreement. happy to answer any questions.
How many acres does it cover?
Acreage of the property. Hold on. One fact I don't have memorized, but I will pull that up real quick. Oops.
You can get that information later.
No,
on in
it's
the,
I've got it 1.44 acres.
1.44 acres. You'll notice also, members of the committee, that because we're going to be building out Health and Human Services building, this can also be used to store some of their files while that's being built. So that would be a good thing for us to have, someplace to put those. Rob?
I think I've made comments before about the more roofs we have, the more maintenance we have to do. What is the condition of the roof, the parking lot, the HVAC of this building?
To my knowledge, the roof is in good condition. I don't know the age of it off the top of my head. The HVAC we had to install new for the election commission. The parking lot, I don't have at the top of my head either. I was just there, earlier this fall. It didn't seem too bad, but we probably are going to, we'll need to obviously some point build into the capital plan the need to either seal coat it or repave it and stripe it. Obviously, if we'll look at the age of the roof in more detail and put that into the capital plan as well.
I'm just concerned because we don't have capital funds to maintain the buildings we currently own, let alone new buildings. So I guess until I get additional information on how long a roof is going to last, I'll be a no vote on this today.
Jim?
Scott, I know this is going back in history, but might be beneficial for the committee. I believe, didn't we spend, I know it was a long drawn out process after some mold and some other issues with the building, but currently don't we have more than what the purchase price is in what we've already remodeled to lease that space?
Yeah, you budgeted and we spent roughly $700,000 to remodel the space that's occupied by the election commission currently.
And then currently, do you know what the lease agreement is for? I'm assuming that would be public record, what we're paying monthly and what that includes. Like, is it a triple net gross, or I'm assuming we're responsible for all. Some lease agreements have that you're responsible for the roof and other issues in there. Or if not today, maybe for another time where you could.
No, it's quite all right. So those dollars are going to be in the election commission budget, and just looking at the adopted FY22 budget for the election commission. Let's see here. Water is just a shade under $1,000 a year. Utilities is right around $8,400 a year. Let's see here. Lease. Building rental. Building rental in FY22 is $51,000 a year. And it'll probably looks like it'll go up a couple of $1,000 based on what it was in 21 and 20. It'll probably go up a couple $1,000 for FY23.
And then can you touch maybe on, I believe the election commission only uses half of the allocated square foot and that it's a building on slab grade, so plans of what we would need that extra space for.
Right. So it is a slab on grade structure. The election commission uses just a little bit more than half of the total square footage. The current owner and seller allowed us to finish out the election commission space in such a way that, quite honestly, the remaining square footage really isn't leasable to him. So he's actually been looking to get out. He actually had it listed earlier this year and didn't have any buyers make him an offer. Would there need to be any improvements to the space that's currently vacant and not leased? It would depend on how we would use it. As it says in the agenda briefing, we would probably use it, or we're recommending to use it for long-term record storage for the time being. That way, it will defray costs that we'll have in having to pay a third party to pay for offsite record storage going forward. As we've talked about previously in some committee, this one or maybe others, the records retention laws in the state of Illinois have not kept pace with technology improvements, and so there are still not all, but many documents that are generated in paper that were mandated by state law to keep in paper format. Wherever we can do that electronically, we do, and wherever we can duplicate an electronic record, we do, in hopes that the state law sometimes gets changed. We've also talked about in the past about how some departments are better than others about records retention policy because it's decentralized in our organization. So there are offices and departments that are very diligent about following the record retention laws and properly disposing of documents as is legally allowed for in the state of Illinois when possible. There are other departments that are less diligent about that and have an inordinate amount of records that are likely capable of being legally destroyed, but they've not gone through the process of doing that or even cataloging all the records that they might have. It's just kind of a hodgepodge across the organization in terms of what we have. To be able to use it for that use really requires very little, if any, improvement to the vacant portion of the building. If you were actually going to put an office in that building, and then it would require significant capital investment in terms of remodeling it. That would, and I think as we've talked in the past, based on the expansion and the growth of the customer base for the Veterans Assistance Commission, this really doesn't work for them. And so we continue to lease space for them on Dries Lane. And then we had contemplated the Regional Office of Education, but the board voted to put that into the HHS campus. And so that's where we plan to consolidate all of the Regional Office of Education functions.
Yes, Jim.
So follow up on that, then, as you said, some departments are better than others about their record storage. So this being that the HSH, or Health and Human Services campus records, would be going over there temporarily.
So we may not, we'll use some of that space for record storage. Quite frankly, we're probably going to use some of that space for temporary office furniture storage because there's going to be some office furniture in the current health department that it's in excellent condition, and there's no reason to throw it away and replace it with brand new. So we need to have a temporary home for that during construction as well. And those are the two primary uses. We do have some space in the basement at Headington Oaks. As we're all aware, we worked into the purchase agreement with Methodist Medical Center of Central Illinois, the free use for 5 years of a portion of the basement at Headington Oaks for record storage. But also keep in mind that if the next policy decision, or next policy decision down the road for the board is what to do with Gift Avenue once the coroner's office moves into the new campus. And we currently use the gymnasium at that building for record storage. And so if the board determines that we want to demolish that building, in 3 or 4 years, then we're going to need to find a permanent home for the records that are currently at Gift Avenue.
Well, I guess this is probably not the right place for it, but if the Health and Human Services campus is going to have to move records, I would hope that they're reviewing those records so that you're not handling them on multiple times to get rid of what they don't longer need.
Yeah. So, correct, Mr. Dillon. The health department is actually probably one of our most diligent offices in terms of records management. They routinely go through the records destruction process for those records that are able to be destroyed. They have them all cataloged, for those that are records that can be destroyed during construction, they're going to actually go to one place. Records that can be destroyed shortly after the new building opens are going to a place, and then they do have some records that they can never destroy, and those are probably going to be temporarily stored in a third place, all of which there is room in the new building to accommodate each one of those 3 going forward once we have the new building constructed and occupied.
Anyone else with questions? All right, at this time, call for the adoption or vote on this resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? One nay, the rest ayes. The resolution carries. Our last one, we are going to not have any discussion in regards to this solar project. The person is absent today and unable, of course, to be here. So we'll move on to miscellaneous. And if anyone has any miscellaneous, good and welfare for the Peoria County. Nobody with anything for good and welfare of the Peoria County? Jimmy?
Just want to wish Mr. Fennell a happy birthday today.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Just one thing for you and whoever may or may not be appointed to this committee when the board reseats itself. The sole item will come at the next regularly scheduled committee meeting, but we may ask you, or whoever the next chairman is going to be, for a special committee meeting on January 12th so that we can get that bid for the public defender in the IT space to the January board meeting that Mark was alluding to in his report earlier. So just make sure that's on we just wanted to put that on everyone's radar.
All right, thank you. You members who may be with us, look forward to a special meeting of this committee. Being no further business, this meeting is adjourned.